Hello and welcome to Report Desk Africa, your weekly dose of stories and insights that are shaping the stories and news across the African continent and making the headlines. Now, RDA guides you through the stories and make you see things deeper in a way that supersedes just the headlines. Welcome once again. My name is Blessings Mosugu and I'm not alone.
My name is Adesewa, Odusoga. Thank you so much for joining Report Desk Africa. Like you know, Report Desk Africa is where we dive into hot-button issues from political upheaval to conflict to economic development and technological process across the continent, so you can make sense of the complex stories that goes beyond the headlines. And I'm your co-host Adesewa Odusoga. Thanks for watching.
Well, that said, first, we're going to take you through the forecast that we gave in the last week. Like we usually do on the show, we try to track stories as they develop. And we told you about the collapse of the internet connectivity amid the ongoing civil unrest in Sudan, where citizens have reported the inability to access the internet. We also did tell you that the Nigerian House of Representatives has resolved the probe alleged certificate racketeering by Nigerian students with some officials of government ministries, departments, and of course agencies, the MDAs.
And on the forecast last week, we also told you that the Ghanaians are now required to pay an annual levy for the carbon emissions produced by petrol or diesel-powered vehicles in the country. And now this week, we'll stay in Nigeria, particularly focusing on the inauguration of the rail system. And then we'll move forward to discuss the recent NLC protest as a result of the rising cost of living in the country. So both of the stories that we'll be discussing on RDA today focuses on the largest black nation on earth, and I'm talking about Nigeria. Just stay with us, don't go anywhere. RDA will be back in a minute. All right, like we told you, we are staying in Nigeria to talk about the new rail line that's just been launched in the Economic Nerve Center, that's Lagos, Nigeria. Now, President Bola Tinubu has inaugurated the rail project in Lagos. Now, the project, an intra-state rail service, is aimed at improving transportation within the city, which spans 37 kilometers. Now, while inaugurating the project, the president reiterated his administration's commitment in improving on the nation's infrastructural development. He also said there is no going back on the reforms embarked upon by his government that have led to the hike of essential goods and services. Let's take a look at this clip where the president has been addressing guests and all the newsmen who were present at the inauguration earlier today.
That work for highest number of people. Not just few smugglers and bootleggers. The fight is on. We'll be on it. We're not looking back. Thank God, Lamada as a public sector institution and Lagos State as a subnational government are both strong and constant. Constant reminders that true change is possible. I speak to Nigerians through this podium that change is possible and change we must achieve. Progress we must achieve. It's not about single individual. It's about the highest growing population in the world. Out of every 5 individual black-colored people is a Nigerian. We cannot afford to relax the budget population. We must plan and prepare for it. We must be committed to great value. And this economy, we will grow it, we will feed ourselves out of the penury, and we'll be happy that we did it.
All right. Well, what you saw there was the president speaking at the inauguration of the red rail line. Some time ago, the blue rail line was launched, and people can still debate whether or not it has been efficient as much as they would expect. Now, the president did say that change is the only constant thing, but he also did mention that some things are not changing in his administration, and one of the things that he said will not change are the reforms that he has made, in terms of making the country better. People might not be comfortable with it yet, but the reforms are not changing anytime soon. Regardless, he has made this other, measures. He has provided these other measures, he and his administration, to make sure that people have better living standards. And, we're talking about the red rail line to make sure that people have better transportation, spend less on movement. And of course, especially in this part of the world, for people staying in Lagos, that this should help to curb the traffic as well. But anyways, joining us to shed more light on this is News Central's Bernard Akede, who was at the inauguration earlier and was covering it as well. Hello, Bernard. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back in the studio again.
How do you feel being on the other side today?
Well, sometimes they say the grass is greener on the other side, so the joke is on you.
I'm looking at your grass. I don't think it is. But anyways, Bernard, you were at the inauguration earlier. So first, I would like for you to share your experience. How was it covering it? And then secondly, a lot of people want to know what exactly is the benefit, or are the benefits that we're expecting from the red rail line. I did say that the blue rail line has still been under some contest, whether or not it has, done what it should do. The red rail line has come, some people have said that it should be, less costly. It should help people move with ease and stuff like that. What are our expectations? What are we looking to see?
All right, starting with the first question, covering it, it's never exactly a pretty affair when you're covering the president's function, especially when you're not in Abuja. President was in Lagos today, and you can expect, as you would expect, traffic everywhere, because certain roads will be cordoned off. Even getting access to the venue was quite a Herculean task. So covering that was a bit of a challenge. But, coming back to the actual matter on the ground, the red rail line, red monorail, of course, it's a laudable project, I must say. If you live in Lagos, if you've heard about Lagos, one thing that is synonymous with Lagos is the kind of traffic that we have here in the commercial nerve center of Nigeria. And to ease that traffic, I believe, is the reason why the red rail line has been commissioned, added to the blue one that we already have. I'll read out a small document here that I have, and it's talking about, the red rail line, saying that this line is using the international standard gauge and is expected to carry about 750,000 passengers daily at the inception, and then 1,100,000 when fully operational. Now, that may sound like a huge number, but then when you come to terms with the fact that Lagos has, slightly more than 20 million residents, as at last census, if I'm not mistaken, or as at last official figures that we had, over 20 million, so supporting about 1.1 million is, it's impressive, but there's still going to be a whole lot to do in terms of, curbing traffic and transportation issues in Nigeria, or in Lagos, I beg your pardon. But then it's a huge step. It's a huge, huge step. Now, for those who have complained about the blue rail, you can understand that one would have expected a whole lot many cars in one train put together so that it can carry a huge number of people, or a large number of people. And that has been one major criticism of the blue rail. If it has just about 4 or 5 cars, how is it expected to convey so many people per day, eventually reducing traffic? So the hope is that with the addition of this red rail, there actually will be some resolve or some resolution to traffic situations in Lagos. Let's not forget that, of course, we still have the BRT buses on Lagos roads. There still are, like you mentioned earlier, Blessings, there still are conversations as to whether that has been a success or not. And then there's still waterway transportation that still needs to largely be exploited, which I strongly believe has not been. Now going deeper into this, we know for those who use Lagos State, official Lagos State means of transportation, talking about BRT buses, the trains, and the boats, there's a cowrie card that you can use across all platforms that can help you commute on road, on rail, or on water. So the hope is that this is still a developing project. Eventually, when it comes to stay, this was just the commissioning. When it eventually comes to stay and is fully operational, the hope is that it would bring some kind of succor to commuters in Lagos. And hopefully, we would have more trains added to these cars that we already have on the rail, so it doesn't just end at the ones that we have.
All right, so Bernard, the rail line is expected to share the right of way with the Lagos-Kano Standard Gauge Railway. And now the route will initially run from Agbado, according to the governor in Ogun State, and then, I mean, the Lagos State governor, but I mean, the route will initially run from Agbado in Ogun State and down to Oyingbo in Lagos, with notable stops. I mean, and I'm sure you have details on that. So my point is, do we have data on those number of Lagosians who ply this route every day? Because from indications, they said that at inception, it's going to take about 500,000 people. And that was the same thing that was said for the Blue Rail line. But I'm not sure if the Blue Rail line indeed takes as much as that numbers on a daily basis. So how do you think the government, I don't know if it's the government's job this time, how do we convince the people to take this alternative transportation system instead of the road? Because even with the availability of the water transportation, the Blue Rail line, the roads are still congested. What do you think is responsible for this?
Well, I think it's one thing to have alternate means of transportation in terms of rail transportation. It's another thing to have proper connectivity. If you are familiar with Lagos roads, again, you know from where the Blue Rail, the terminal, I believe, at Marina, you'll see that there's quite a distance, and this is my observation as a matter of fact, there's quite some distance from the BRT bus stop to where you will take the train from. So it means that, and there's no car park. So it means that if you're going to use that Blue Rail, first of all, if you're coming by BRT bus, you have to stop at the BRT terminal, and then you walk quite a distance to where the train will eventually pick you up eventually. And if you're driving, there's nowhere to park your car, so you have to find a way to get there. I have spoken to some elderly, I would say 2 elderly people in Lagos State. One was a politician, one is a Lagosian who has been here all his life. And these are the things that they complained about, that in developed times, I mean, to start with, and to play devil's advocate for the government, it is a laudable project, and hopefully we can mature and develop from here. But first of all, if there's no proper connectivity, it will be challenging for people to move from where they are to the train stations and then board these trains and then head to where they are going. And then secondly, the government will have to make some kind of easy passageway for people and convince them to eventually use these rail lines. Some of the convincing methods could be making it affordable, on the one hand, throwing in some freebies maybe. I mentioned earlier that the cowrie cards that Lagos State government has authorized to be used can be used across all 3 platforms, which is road, rail, and water, which is quite impressive. Things like this can actually encourage people to make use of these rail lines. Also, to go with what you said, Shewa, it's a bit, one would doubt if truly these rail lines, haven't looked at them, can actually convey up to 500,000 people daily. This one from the document I have says 750,000 passengers at the inception, and then expecting it to increase to about 1.1 million passengers eventually when it's fully operational. I don't know if the number of cars that each of these trains have will be able to convey that many passengers per day eventually. Maybe when it's fully operational, by fully operational, they mean that there will be more trains or more cars added to the existing trains so that it can actually eventually convey that many people. But then, it all remains to be seen how successful this will be. We hope that it will be successful, but it remains to be seen how successful this would be.
All right, thank you, Bennett. I think I'm also going to, I want us to look into the level of security as well. When different means of transportation are being launched, right, everything needs to be properly checked. But I think the major ones would be aircraft, the water transport, and of course the rail lines, because these are things that transport larger numbers. We're talking about 500,000 and then, subsequently over 1 million people. So this should probably be looked into. Analysts have said that when rail lines are launched, it shouldn't just start immediately. It should be tested and retested, checked and rechecked. So have there been conversations around testing? Remember when the Blue Rail line was launched, the governor tested, some certain people tested. People went in, just for the fun of it, but they were using it as a testing measure. So at least they can ascertain to a certain level how safe it is. But for the Red Rail line now, have there been conversations around testing it to make sure that it is safe? Because that is a lot you know, that's a huge number, if you ask me, of people on a daily basis. You know, we cannot afford to put their lives at risk. That's one. And then secondly, you talked about, you know, the hassle of getting there, you know, where to park your cars if you don't want to drive, how people can assess it. So are there also conversations around making it more accessible so it doesn't become too cumbersome, and then people will just be like, you know what, I'm just going to stick to my Molue or the yellow buses or the Uber drivers that I'm using?
Molue, I haven't heard that word in a while.
I know, me too. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, but for the red rail, as compared to the blue, where we had the event today, which is the takeoff point of the red rail, I believe, from Ikeja, just behind Computer Village. Again, for those who are familiar with Lagos roads, it's situated in a place where there is a lot of space, parking space, and then I think this was more strategically positioned because it's also a BRT bus terminal. So people who take the BRT buses can actually alight at those terminals and then use the rail, which makes a whole lot more sense than what we have when compared to the blue rail. So as far as accessibility is concerned, I'll give the red rail a pass mark. I beg your pardon. For security and for safety, first of all, and testing, yes, Mr. President and some members of his entourage and some of the dignitaries who were present today did take a test drive on the rail, went down. I'm not sure they went all the way down to Agbado from Ikeja, but they actually did go down maybe to Agege and then, you know, turned back to Ikeja where they got off the train. So I would call that the first official testing and the first pilot launch, the pilot launch, if you like. Remember that the blue rail, when it was also launched, it didn't kick off immediately. I want to believe that the time interval between when it was launched and when it kicked off, you know, that time was used to test certain things like what you have asked about: safety, security, convenience, you know, and to check all other things that could possibly, you know, go wrong with the rail. Remember, there was a time we saw a video where it looked like some people were pushing the train, and then critics of the government said, well, there you have it. Of course, government did come to debunk that particular video, saying it was fake. So I want to think that they would like to use this period between today's official launch and when eventually it will officially kickstart as the testing period, to ensure that everything that needs to be in place is actually in place, to ensure that the people who need to be running and manning this new facility actually are on ground doing it. Again, it did look very impressive. It looked, I could call it world-class standard. It looked that way. But then we would hope that maintenance, which largely has been a challenge in Nigeria, would be in tip-top condition if we really want to keep this going and we want to maintain, or we want to ensure that transportation in Lagos particularly will be a thing of ease from here on.
Definitely, Bernard. I think I agree with you because maintenance has been one of the biggest challenges. And I would say, as a resident in Lagos, and I think Bernard and Blessings would agree with me, that we have to give it to Lagos State government when it comes to infrastructure, because it's just like they're doing something that I believe other governors of the 35 other states in Nigeria are not doing. I think, I mean, most recently, Abia State seems to be doing so well with infrastructure, but I think it's poor enough to know that just one or two states out of over 30 states in the country is giving the citizens at least 50% of the things that they demand or things that they need, you know, in the state. I would also recall that Governor Sanwo-Olu said in one of the, you know, he had like a media chat with, I think, journalists some days back, where he mentioned that Lamata, who is spearheading this project, was a baby of the then former governor of Lagos State, who is now the president of Nigeria. Yes. And then if President Tinubu had this vision, and then 20 years down the line, this is what we have: a water transportation that is working, maybe not 100% effective, but is also working as an alternative. I can bear witness to that. We have a BRT bus, now we have the rail system. Can the president, do you think that the president can now transform his ideas or his vision that he had 20 years back for Lagos State for Nigeria now? Maybe, I know that he cannot impose it on the state governors. Maybe advise the state governors to have at least transportation sector. Let's get it right for the transportation sector. Yeah, can we have a federal Lamata in this case? If
you don't mind, I'll butt in there. I totally agree with you, Shawa. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Abia State, or was it the Imo State governor, I saw his vehicle at the event, the official vehicle, you know, with the license plate stating either Imo or Abia State. one of the two. And these are the kind of things that you would like other state governors to look into and to address, particularly states where infrastructure is a basic problem. In Lagos State, they say Lagos leads and others follow. And it's not far from the truth, to be honest. In as much as we could bash the Lagos State government for what they are doing or what they are not doing, you can tell when compared to other states that a lot of things, a lot of sectors, Lagos actually is leading the pack. So you would want to expect that other state governors would want to do the same thing. Recently, like you mentioned, Abia State residents have been celebrating constant power because of what their government has done. And these are things that are not far-fetched. Of course, these are things that would make the lives of Nigerians a lot better. So again, like you also mentioned, if Mr. President, current Mr. President, gave birth to this idea while he was the governor some 20 years ago, and then now these ideas are seeing the light of day as we move on. Hopefully, he can also, collectively with the other governors, give birth to different ideas that can help. Or these governors can borrow leaves from the ideas that he birthed back in the day in Lagos and then take it back to their own states and implement them in their own style, in their own format that will suit their own climate and their own terrain so that, of course, the lives of Nigerians will be better in terms of infrastructural development.
I think very quickly, I'm just going to say that, I saw a trending video this morning, I don't know if you both saw it, of his convoy, that's the president's convoy now, and that, in the video, on the left side, I believe, was his convoy, and the right side was a traffic jam, people, and someone said that is literally a representation of what Nigeria is, the president is on a smooth sail, and then the citizens are standing on the mandate in traffic, and, that got a lot of people talking, and a lot of people were saying that, in his speech, for example, you hear him say things like nothing is changing in the resolve. That is probably someone who has a vision, but a lot of people do not see that way. Why? Because people are hungry, people are starving, and it now looks as though these palliatives are coming, they're just meant to pad up the suffering. And from what we're seeing, there's a fear that it might get worse. So some people are of the opinion that this is, heading south. But for someone who, like Shewa said, this, red rail line is or was his brainchild, if his brainchild is producing this kind of results, then maybe, just maybe, we can give it a chance to see how it goes. The only challenge that people are having is the hardship that it's bringing, and it's getting worse and nobody is paying attention to it. If only we could make things easier for people while this, this resolves and these measures are being put in place, it would have been top notch. But thank you so much, Bennett, for joining us. Thank you for covering it. And of course, we're definitely going to keep the viewers updated on the red rail line and of course more information as it unfolds. Thank you once again, Bennett.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're still watching RDA, and we have just discussed the launch of the red rail line. That's such a tongue twister. And definitely we're going to keep you updated. But don't go anywhere, because we just finished the first half, and the second half we're still going to stay in Nigeria to discuss a very topical issue as well. It's still RDA, so stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on Report Desk Africa, the show that keeps you up to speed on the happenings across the African continent. Now, in case you're just joining us, on the first half of the show, we talked about the red rail line in Nigeria that has just been launched, the benefits and the possible challenges as well as the solutions. And of course, we had Bernard Akede, who has been covering, or who did cover the inauguration, join us. And definitely we're going to keep you up to speed as the development unfolds. Now, in the face of the steady depreciation of the value of the naira and the dip in the standard of living, Nigerians are crying for help to the country's president to reverse some of his policies. And if you did follow us in the first half, we said that in his statement, he said none of these policies are changing. Now, agitations and protests have been recorded both online and offline spaces across the country, while the government continues to plead for patience. Now, my co-host, News Central's very own Adesewa Odusoga, was on the street of Lagos on the day of the protest and compiled this report. Take a look.
Nigeria is a country with enormous economic potential, but is currently facing several difficulties that have led to widespread suffering among its people. The current predicament is complicated, but the economic hardship has since taken the cake, with outbursts and protests spreading across the nation.
Hunger and anger is what describes the mood of many Nigerians across the country amidst the economic crisis at this moment. At Ikeja, capital of Lagos, Nigeria, many residents are calling for help. It appears that they have had enough of the current economic crisis in the country.
This suffering is too much. We are suffering and smiling. Even my 2 children is in university. Even coming for 200,000 3 days because my mother that helped me for 150,000 day before yesterday. Because she just get admission of recent. For me to add Gary from village to come to Lagos, is it easy? Cost of Gary is 2,800 naira.
The National Labour Congress is holding a series of protests across the country demanding the reversal of some economic policies of the President Tinubu-led administration, which also includes the removal of fuel subsidies. These motorists says it is becoming more difficult for commuters to afford his fees.
Epo 3,000 naira tẹ́lẹ̀, nísìnyí epo 11,000 la máa rà lọ. Àwọn èrò gan sanwó wọn complain. So I need kí ìjọba help wa kan jọ nítorí Ọlọ́run.
Gbogbo owó tán kó mọ́ra wọn lọ́wọ́ kan kó sílẹ̀ fún àmẹ̀kúnnù kó ṣàwọn náà tó máa sáàb torí pé àwọn gangan ni wọ́n kówó lọ́wọ́.
One of the most popular means of disapproval of government policies and performances in Nigeria is through protest, one that is sometimes laced with strategies or sponsored by the opposition. But in this case, the people are calling for an end to hunger drawn from the rising cost of living in the country. Many have also insisted not to join any form of protest, citing traumatic experiences from previous protests.
This is Garden Fawayeme Freedom Park, a park that is known to be the nerve center for all forms of protests happening in Nigeria. But in an unusual turn, the site is unusually empty, even amidst the series of protests happening across Nigeria. In Lagos for News Central, Adesewa Odusoga.
All right, what you just saw is the report put together, of course, by my co-host Adesewa Odusoga on the protest, based on the cost of living and the cost of things and the economy generally right now. But joining us now to discuss this is News Central's Head of Research, Abdulateef Ahmed. Thank you so much, Abdulateef, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, we see that the Labour Union is claiming success in the nationwide protest. Do we expect the short-term suspension of a strike to address the underlying issue of hunger, rising cost of living, and inflation? And I think that it's best to understand why exactly the strike was suspended, because it's not the first time that the NLC has been accused of, inciting something and then putting an abrupt end to it for no reason at all, or maybe reasons best known to them that they refuse to share. And I think we're going to go to the TUC later and the reason they're not participating in this. But what do you think this hopes to achieve?
First, let me say that the rising cost of living and other inflationary issues that the country is facing at the moment has stretched imaginations, and it has subjected policymakers to a lot of thinking. However, the fact that the labor unions are protesting means that they do not want to be on that side of history where people will say that while all of this was happening, what did you do? Were you quiet? Did you agitate? Did you complain? Again, it is easy to dismiss, NLC's protest and say, well, it is predictable. But if you do not protest in the first place, which is a legitimate means of expressing, your dissatisfaction with governance, if you do not protest in the first place, those in government may begin to assume that all that they are doing, is perfect, and they continue to do such things. But the pressure is high on, the ordinary Nigerian on the streets. So again, while the protest is in order, it may not achieve, the desired result, but it will move the government at least to some level of action. That is my expectation, because again, we do not need the labor unions to protest before government takes the right action. It is because government is refusing to take certain decisions that the protests were necessitated. And Nigerians, well, like someone mentioned, are hungry and angry, and that is all the fuel you need to ensure that a successful protest runs.
All right, all right. Abdul Latif, let me come in here. When President Tinubu was in Lagos today, he called out the NLC for calling for a strike in the first place. He said it was too early, to embark on a strike for an administration that had barely spent 9 months in office. So I would like to ask, do you think should we even gauge the reaction of people to the current situation based on how long an administration has been in power for? For him to have said he has just spent 9 months. I think we can also counter that and said just in 9 months, Nigerians have gone through series of emotions and hardship. So, I mean, react to the president's call out of the NLC, please.
It is normal. You have, sometimes you have basically ideological perspectives to issues, but that is not enough. The man on the street doesn't understand why, the Naira is dancing, is galloping, why there's hyperinflation, why he's unable to buy things on the market. So the president's reaction, while it is understandable, Nigerians don't have all the 9 months. They don't have 1 year to say they want to see how the government's plans are panning out. However, you cannot change the lives of people just in a matter of months. Damage that has been done for 8 years under the Buhari administration will continue to impact Nigerians for a long time. And that is why, for me, on a personal level, I do not see how you can successfully fix the economy without apprehending people who mismanage the economy. Because while you're trying to fix the economy, be it in 9 months, in 1 year, in 3 years, people who had sabotaged the economy will continue to do the same thing. While you push forward for 1 step, they push you backward for 10 steps. Don't forget, some of them are non-state actors. Some of them have the inner workings and understanding of what is happening within the government places. So yes, the government is barely 9 months. But in 9 months, a lot of people have died from hunger. In 9 months, a lot of people have suffered irreversible losses. So the president may just be buying time, because when people bunch all their anger and frustration together in one unified voice, I don't even think governors will be able to sit in their offices, or the president will literally be shaking. But again, probably he's trying to see how far Nigerians can be stretched, because I do not know, I have not seen how far you can stretch Nigerians before they begin to say enough.
Thank you, Abdul Latif. I mean, it's a very spot-on counter-argument from yourself and Adesewa. If he's going to say that 9 months is not enough to prove himself, then he should also look into the fact that 9 months, in 9 months, a lot has happened, and it's been not even a stagnant or a steady growth now. It's been a downward slide, and it's kind of disastrous for the people. And you also talked about what the common man understands or what they don't understand. They may not know why the dollar is falling. They may not know why the Naira, is falling against the dollar. But one thing is for sure, the common man understands that the hardship is real, understands that things are getting progressively worse. So if all of these things, the strike aside now, if we're saying that, okay, the Tinubu administration has greater plans for the people, and he's saying this every time, trying to prove it probably, but the people are not seeing it. So what is the hope that there is? Because to be honest, the common man, bringing the NLC back into the conversation, the common man might just have lost hope in the NLC because of the things that we said earlier, calling strike and then ending the strike abruptly. So that's not an argument for a lot of them. But from a vantage point, what would we say can give hope to the people right now? Because if we're talking about palliatives, the 25K palliative might definitely not do anything for an average family, and it has not even been disbursed. So what is the hope for a common man? Let's even say that this gets worse and then eventually gets better. What do we hold on to as a country?
Well, when you see the situation we are in, we are having galloping inflation, and this has risen from 9% in 2015 to about 12% in 2018, and now it's going higher. Now, for the common man, one thing is sure: the moment you upset the cost of food, food prices, it will affect everything, from up downwards. So for the common man, you have to fix the cost of food. Now, again, for you to fix the cost of food, you must ask yourself, why are we importing so much when we have a lot of arable lands across the country? Most of the arable lands are occupied now by bandits and miscreants and people who stop farmers from being able to access their farms. unable to farm products, and then it's affecting the cost of, distribution, sales, and all of that for, staples in the market. Now, the government must do everything it can to ensure that the food prices drop. That is one. Two, it's a thing of joy that, the rail line, the red line has been commissioned. You see, again, if you look at what it costs government to put that out, a lot of people will ask you, is it the rail line that we are going to eat? The street parlance. But the truth of the matter is, a rail line that costs close to 200 billion, if you were to share that money to, say, an entire state like Bayelsa, you'll be able to give almost every Bayelsan 50,000 on a monthly basis for another 3 months. But after that, what next? But the fact that you can move 500,000 people in Lagos in record time means that it will cut down the cost of transportation for them. It will cut down, man hours they spend on the road while trying to go back home or get to their offices or to their various places of businesses. If you had what is happening in Lagos happen in every state, it will transcend, it will affect the common man, it will improve the quality of life, and the access to, better life for the ordinary Nigerians. There are states in Nigeria that there's probably nothing happening. Like, I could ask anybody, tell me the last time something happened, something remarkable happened in Gombe or Yobe State, for example. Like, I can't remember. But I keep my eyes on what is happening on the, across the country. But I tell you, a lot of governors are barely there without ideas on how to move, their countries forward, their states forward. The next question will be, if you see that this is happening in Abia State, this other thing is happening in Lagos State, why is nothing happening in your state? Every governor should be worried about that, because the president at his level has issues that he has to contend with. Again, because the governance is closer to people at the state level, we are bound to ask these questions. Why are governors of states, in short supply of smart ideas that can move people, the ordinary citizens forward?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Abdulateef. I love that ending note, and it's something that's actually thought-provoking. And if any governor is watching now, any governor of those states that are responsible, that's been called out, I think it's important to go back to the drawing board and make it a competitive thing, if at all. If you see the Lagos and Abia State is doing it, and they demand, it's right for your people to demand, governance, right governance from you. If Lagosians can enjoy it, why not us? The rest of the states. Thank you so much for your time on Report Desk Africa. We appreciate your submissions.
Thank you for having me.
And that's much of what we can take on Report Desk Africa this week. And apologies, we can't take forecasts this week. But
we can look into our crystal ball.
Exactly. So we're going to give you like a recap when you watch Report Desk Africa next week. This is a cue to actually watch Report Desk Africa next week. And it's a wrap from me. My name is Adesewa Odusoga, and my co-host.
I'm Blessings Mosugu. Have a lovely evening.